Good afternoon. At this time, I'd like to call the April 8th, 2025 special meeting and possible executive session of the Scottsdale City Council to order. City Clerk Ben Lane, please conduct the roll call.
Thank you, Mayor. Mayor Lisa Borowski.
Present.
Vice Mayor Jane Duboscus.
Present.
Councilmembers Barry Graham. Adam Quasman. Barry. Kathy Littlefield.
Here.
Marianne McCallan.
Present.
And Solange Whitehead.
Here.
Interim City Manager Greg Caton.
Here.
City Attorney Sherry Scott.
Here.
And the clerk is present. Thank you, Mayor.
So generally speaking, as always, the executive session is reserved to discuss and consider employment, assignment, appointment, promotion, and compensation and benefits of a permanent city manager. I shouldn't say as always, because this is specific. And employment matters relating to the city manager's office, or discuss and consider its position and instruct its city attorneys regarding the public body's position on contracts that are the subject of employment negotiations, or discuss and consult with the city's attorneys for legal advice and necessary city staff regarding the employment, assignment, appointment, and compensation and benefits of a city manager, or discuss and consult the city attorneys and designated representatives of the city to consider legal advice related to recently introduced state legislation that will impact the city's multifamily residential, hotel, and industrial land uses. So before I entertain a motion, can you be more specific? I understand, let's take them separately because there are two items for consideration in executive session. One is the appointment of the city manager, I believe, and the second one is the SB 1543. Is that correct, Sherry Scott?
That's correct, but we're really, rather than specifically mentioning the Senate bill number, is just legal advice related to recently introduced state legislation that will impact the city's multifamily residential, hotel, and industrial land uses. It's a little more broad.
So taking that item, I have a question about that. Are we involved in pending litigation regarding that, or is this the contemplation of litigation related to that issue?
We are not involved in any pending litigation.
So is it regarding the contemplation of litigation?
It allows the council to discuss contemplation of litigation.
Receive legal advice, you mean?
It allows the council to receive legal advice, and that legal advice could be related to potential litigation, certainly.
Okay, and can you also speak to the issue involving the city manager appointment? Why that needs to be subject to an executive session?
Mayor, it is an allowed executive session topic under the state's open meeting law.
I'm aware. So with that, I would like to make a motion to have the city manager appointment discussion reserved in the open session, or have that withdrawn from executive session and have that right now in open session. Does anyone want to second that?
If I may, Mayor, you would not be able to have an open meeting item on this matter, the city manager's potential appointment at 4 o'clock, because our regular meeting is scheduled for 5 o'clock. You do have an item on for your regular meeting where that could be discussed.
On the regular meeting agenda.
On the regular meeting.
Yes, I'd like to do that. I don't see any second. Does anyone want to do that as well? And the basis for my motion is we have an interim city manager, Greg Caton, who is being considered for a permanent appointment. I believe the residents of Scottsdale should be availed to those discussions, just like it would be in an interview situation if we were down to the final candidates, which has, in my experience, been the case. And I take exception with the fact that we need to do this behind closed doors. I am not in favor of this at all. I think that if we're having a legitimate interview here, which will alleviate or do away with our responsibility to do, or pre-decided responsibility to do a national search, I believe it's incumbent upon us to be transparent and have those discussions in full view of our public.
Madam Mayor, may I make a motion?
I didn't see a second. Does anyone have a second for mine?
Mayor, I just have a question for you. I just have a question about your motion. So I'm confused.
Go ahead.
Okay,
Yep,
so
ask us a question.
my question just is that is the normal, what is the standard and norm for the city of Scottsdale? So without any hyperbole, clearly there's disagreement on the nature and extent of the hiring, fine, open and honest in front of everybody, right? However, what is the norm in the city of Scottsdale? Is it going into executive session, and any charter officer, the city manager, the city attorney, otherwise, right? Because we could play this game for everybody, right? So is the norm go into executive session, hash it out in executive session, come up with a contract positively or negatively, then vote on it in the general session? Or is the norm to hash out the sausage out here? I'm okay with both. So either way, I'm totally fine with it, but I just want to follow the calm, normal, standard practice of Scottsdale.
It's a great question, and while there probably isn't a norm, there's a state statute that speaks to this, which allows us to go either way. But I will note, importantly, the norm as established by this council, effective January 14th, 2025, was to have this discussion in open session when it pertained to former acting city manager Bill Murphy. So I'm not sure why would we treat this individual, our current interim city manager, any different than we would have done then. So to answer your question, that's our norm.
To that point, Madam Mayor, Bill Murphy, I believe, resigned prior to the council meeting, if I'm not mistaken. So may I direct that to Ms. Scott, just to find out just what the background was beforehand in terms of you have to excuse me. This is my first time on the council. I just would like to know the norm of charter officers. Does it, and not just this city, perhaps you know of other cities, does it traditionally go to executive session first and then come out here? Or is it discussed out here entirely? Again, I am not decided on the outcome here. I just want to follow the standard and keep it calm and regular.
Mayor?
I just want to speak to that. While he did, before you give any advice here, pardon me, while he did resign prior to his appearance at the regular session agenda item, it was scheduled for an open meeting.
Mayor and Councilman Quasman, there is no set process. As the mayor pointed out, the open meeting law does allow the council to move into executive session to discuss these matters. It has an exception that for salary discussions, an officer or employee may demand that the discussion occur at a public meeting. So it gives the employee the option of demanding that the discussion occur at a public meeting. In terms of how the city has done it with past councils, sometimes there's a statement publicly by the applicants applying, and then there's a convening into executive session to discuss a potential appointment in terms of a contract. And I think that once we're at that point, if the council's at that point of wanting to extend a contract and enter into those discussions, that typically does happen in executive session before it is approved in a public meeting.
Madam Mayor, so you're talking, I just want to be very clear, you want to have a salary discussion, potential salary discussion in an open meeting as opposed to in an executive session?
Absolutely not. That's a specific element that is reserved exclusively, as far as I understand, pursuant to the statute, to the executive session. However, and this is a question, thank you for bringing that up, do we have a proposed contract? Are we reviewing the proposed contract today in executive session? This is for a determination on whether we forego the executive search, correct? And appoint the interim city manager.
Well, I think the executive session is written broadly to allow the council to consider those items, but there is a template contract that we've been using for years that's in the public materials with a couple of spaces for terms that need to be filled in. And it's up to the council whether or not the council's comfortable with that template contract or wants to make additional changes. If you reconvene in executive session and get legal advice and discuss contracts that may be the subject of negotiation, which you are authorized to do, if the council's not ready to appoint a city manager or approve a contract in the regular meeting, that item can be continued or otherwise disposed of. There's a lot of variety for the council here to make its determination. And if the council chooses not to convene into executive session, the council certainly has the opportunity to do that as well.
Madam Mayor.
Go ahead, Councilman Graham.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I would, the public is expecting us to start our regular meeting at 5 p.m. We have a very full executive session. We're probably going to run past 5 p.m. and we're going to make the public wait for us. So I would like to get back into executive session as expeditiously as possible. I have been on boards and commissions since 2014, and I've been on council for a few years. I've always seen the terms of these hires done in executive session. The last time with Greg Caton interim, that was because he was appointed interim city manager by Bill Murphy, and then we affirmed that up here by vote. So with that, I will move to expeditiously adjourn to executive session to discuss items A, B, C, and D. Thank you.
Second.
Before I vote, I'm just lodging my objection. I think we owe it to the public to have these discussions with the council and the acting city manager in public. Thank you.
Mayor, if I could, I had my call.
I didn't see that, sorry.
Yes,
Kathy.
I'd like to speak to
Go ahead.
Barry second. I've been on this council for over 10 years, 10 long years, and I've seen a number of charter officers being appointed, being considered for various positions, including the city manager. It's always been, in my experience, in a closed exec session where we discuss these things in private, iron out what we need to iron out, get our questions answered. Sometimes we'll bring the candidate into the exec session where we can ask him questions and get his answers to the concerns that we have, and then he leaves, and we go on with our considerations and our discussions. The terms of the salary and the compensation has always been an exec session, and I don't remember any time for any of the charter officers that it has not been. So I think if you don't do that, you're breaking with the history and the tradition of how we handle these kinds of decisions. Thank you.
Seeing no other comments, please register your vote. At this time, we are adjourned into executive session. Thank you.